start early and be closed by 9:30. You're not saying something about my chairing again, are you? I'm very sensitive about my timing here.
We would never do that.
I've already said to John, we could probably truck through this reasonably fast, but I'm always conscious that's a kiss of death. Oh yeah, but you're not doing your work properly, are you? That's, yeah, no, look, we'll see how we go. It's a reasonable, it's a very good agenda, Andrea. I want to stress that, but maybe we can cut it reasonably well and quickly. I am keen that we make a start at 9:30. Marcella, are we live streaming and all ready to rock it, are we?
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's good. Folk are ready? Looks like it. Okay, I wonder if we could, firstly welcome you all to the meeting. It's great to be here on a fine Wellington day. I can assure you it's darn cold down south. With the threat of snow to 500 metres tonight. But look, great to be here. I wonder if we could just start, please, if we'd all join together in saying the karakia, please. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia ma kina ki uta. Kia ma taratara ki tai. E hi a ke te arakura. E tio. Hey hoka, ti hey. Thank you very much. Right, moving into the meeting in terms of apologies. Early departure, Tori about 11, John about 12. I just like anybody else.
We just got from Puiwi Kelly for lateness.
Oh, okay. We could just note. Lateness. And look, I know it's their officers or guests, but I'd just like to note Stephen will be with us, I think, a wee bit later on. Yeah. But otherwise, Andrea will more than adequately handle. I think Stephen had a medical appointment, so that's no worries. I've accused him, but it's his fact that he's retiring, but he said, no, it's genuine. and look, we have an apology from Laura Cannon, one of our OAG members who's always present, but Laura's not well today, so we've ably got Karen here somewhere. G'day, Karen. But Laura is an apology today. So all of those, could I just move from the chair that we note and sustain the various apologies? Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Rebecca. Put the motion, all those. Oh, take your machines. Got it. Thank you. If we could vote, please. Are there any matters on the agenda that people need to note conflict?
It's waiting in a vote for Councillor Chang.
Ray, are you in the meeting? Brilliant, buddy. Thank you. I'm glad I'm not the last. I probably will be. I probably will be for the rest. So thank you, Ray. Are there any matters of your personal interests you need to raise with the meeting? There are none. Can we look at the minutes then, please, for 21 Feb? I'll move from the chair. They're taken as true and correct. I have a seconder, please. Thanks, John. Are there any matters of accuracy or comment people need to make on them? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Oh. I can assure you some other meetings would be out of here by 11, John, in an hour if we didn't have to use this machine. Right, okay. It's taking control out of the chair to keep things moving along. I haven't been informed of any additional matters we need to add to the agenda. Members, there's nothing anybody needs to raise in the course of the meeting. Good. I've got no notices of public participation. That puts us in the position of being able to get straight into general business. And if we could move to the 2.1, which is the insurance update. Andre, welcome. Andy. Oh, look, it's her writing. Andy, thank you for being here. Look, and it was nice to meet you at the workshop. For me, I think probably for the first time, and appreciate the work you gave us through the workshop. So please, you're up.
I will introduce.
Oh, you'll introduce? Yep. Okay, thank you. Oh, okay. Writing instructions. Here we go. In your hand, Andrea and Andy.
So just to introduce this paper, we provided a briefing
last week, I think it was, just in terms of the insurance roadmap, so that all members of the committee have visibility of what we're trying to achieve with the roadmap itself. We do regularly come back and report on our progress, and the purpose of this paper is to highlight the progress that we are making on our insurance roadmap. I think a critical element of that is the fact that our 3 major material damage policies are currently going out for renewal, and we're noting the progress here. Those we need to work on that towards the end of this month and lock that in by 1 June or 31 May. We do have some updates, but of course, because we're in the midst of that, we will do that in PX in terms of where we're at, and Andy will talk to that then. But this paper is really just a general update on where things are at more broadly. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for either Andrea or Andy at this stage? I think yes. Yeah. So you're waiting for PX, are you, Ray? Okay. Andrew and Andy, I just look, and it does come up, I think, when we, it also partly comes up under your plan. I was interested as we look through the coming year and your work program, particularly around climate change, and recognising we've got a climate change team, and I think it would be useful to think through that with our insurances when we consider that next, and obviously I'll be looking forward to how the program in 24-25 rolls out.
Yep, sure.
Yeah, so at the moment we are talking with our climate change team and helping them to prepare for doing some climate risk assessment modelling.
Yep.
And we'll continue with that relationship, and we're hoping to be able to feed in the results from their climate risk assessment into our work as well, to help us inform what we should be insuring for.
Brilliant. That's great. No, look, I appreciate that. And actually, sorry, I knew I'd seen it somewhere. Sorry, it was in paragraph 37. You noted that they will come in the future, but if I could just emphasise that is an important dimension we need to take into account in terms of our risk assessment, which clearly you have, Andy, and I appreciate that. Any other questions at this stage? Yes, Iona.
Thank you, and sorry I wasn't able to be at the briefing last week because I was at a regional land transport committee meeting. So I'm just wondering if the insurers are interested in, given that households and businesses are under increasing pressure insurance-wise too, about the flow and impacts to council?
We did cover this in the briefing to a certain extent, and you are welcome to watch it online post the event as well. Small plug. I think, the key thing really is making sure we've got a significant risk internally with our own insurance cover and focusing on that. But what I would note is that because we are working so hard in this space, we are starting to have those wider and broader conversations. And of course, we do need to focus on, as stewards of the assets of Wellington City Council, focus on that first and foremost, but do recognise the broader risks that Wellingtonians face. When we did travel to London to meet with reinsurers, they were very cognisant of that and very cognisant in how we were preparing our long-term plan as a result of that as well. So, yeah.
Sorry, 2 more questions. Someone told me a long time ago that the insurance industry is the best friend of the climate change activists because they were long accepted that climate change was a reality. Are they holding us to account, or other clients, for not seeing that a bit sooner?
In short, Iona, yes. We are seeing that where there is not enough evidence of climate action being taken, insurers are hesitant to insure.
Okay, and sorry, that's useful, but the question was also just for past inaction. Yep.
Every renewal, the insurers reassess, so it's an annual cycle. It may not be relevant anymore for past inaction.
Yep.
I've got Ray and then Geordie.
Great, thanks very much. Obviously, the insurance companies have their own assessment of climate change, and they have their own actuaries to actually understand exactly what sort of levels of risk are there. So we also have our own climate change people, and so are we actually, both of us, looking at the same data? And so then if we have a difference of opinion to what the insurance companies have, is there any wiggle room there? Can we negotiate something? Can we talk about, what our position is and what we view, or are they just intransigent and just say, well, take it or leave it?
I think that's a really useful point, Ray, and I think, we don't get into all of the details of the modelling of reinsurers or anything like that, but a really important point in having our conversations with reinsurers is to ensure that they understand what we're doing in this space, and that, so that when they're doing their modelling, they understand what we're doing to action these things, what a, general control environment is, and they take it from that. That said, as noted in the paper, we are doing our own modelling as well, and that will be useful to have those informing conversations rather than talk more conceptually about what we're doing. Having that modelling will actually be supporting those discussions even further.
Thanks, Ray. Geordie.
Yeah, I just read a piece on Manage Retreat in RNZ this morning, and it got me sort of thinking about the way that we select the assets that we are insuring in partnership with those insurers. Are we looking to not insure areas that would be affected by sea level rise?
Not at this point, but we do need to obviously go through and run an exercise at some point, particularly noting through the insurance roadmap that Andy's doing that work on pulling together all the assets that we own, making sure we've got a source of truth, doing her loss modelling on that, starting to work through that. Once we have that resource, there's a really important conversation that we need to have around what assets we want to continue to reinsure in the future. So that's part of this insurance roadmap journey.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Any other? Yes, Ray.
Thanks. Just another question on what you just said, Andrea. My understanding was that we don't actually choose what we insure, but we get a fixed figure on what the insurance companies will cover. And I think we mentioned 750 million or something. And so the insurance company will say that this is what we will insure you for. And so it's up to us to decide what it covers. Is that correct, or is it?
Andy, do you want to explain that?
To a point, yes. So that level of insurance that we purchase is applied to the sum insured. So what we're talking about here is selecting what is included in the sum insured.
Thank you, Iona.
Andrea, do the insurance companies have any view on the airport sale and the use of the shares for self-insurance?
We have not had that conversation with them.
And then the other question was, are they looking at what we're doing to protect ourselves to stop claiming for insurance? So, for example, Siobhan told me that we could build a seawall to protect the CBD. So just as an example,
So they very much look at claims history in terms of their modelling, I guess, of whether or not we are, something that they want to reinsure. So we are very careful about the claims that we do make, and that's of course why we have Andy, what's our minor insurance fund called?
The self-insurance reserve.
Yeah, the self-insurance reserve, so that we're not tapping into our major insurance policies for kind of small, claims.
Thank you. Yes, Wendy.
Just a question about the risk financing model that you highlight in the work plan, which sort of flows on from looking at the options. Will that sort of provide that? I guess what I'm still trying to get my head around all of this, and that briefing was very useful. Just a visual picture of, here's the assets, here's what we insure. Here's the sum, assets we choose to insure. Here's the sum insured. Here's the level of cover we get through insurance. That overall picture, which kind of really paints a picture of this is how level of risk transfer we're achieving through this, and what is the appropriate product for different things we're trying to do. So will that come through that work that you're doing, Andy? Great, yeah.
Yeah, that will be addressed as we continue through this work.
Yeah, okay.
And we would be more than happy when we complete this work to come back and brief the committee and the councillors on that as well, because I think this is an ongoing conversation through the insurance roadmap.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, Sayana.
Sorry, Andrea, I might not have made my question clear. In the earthquake-prone building space, the insurers are telling us to build better. Are they doing that in the climate space to protect ourselves in the first place, and then looking at us and going, well, you're not doing enough?
Well, I think in the earthquake-prone building space, I'm not sure the insurers are telling us that directly, but we are, we are looking at that as part of our risk mitigation and what we can get insurance for, and they're doing that with all risks, whether it be earthquake prone or whether they're doing it with climate risks. So the point of the conversations are, what are we doing in that space? Because then they factor that into their modelling to understand where the risks lie. If we're not taking those kind of actions, then that exposes us to a level of risk in terms of our ability to get insurance.
So, Anna, I wanted to make one sort of concluding comment, which was out of the workshop, we recognised, I think in effect, Andy, this is something we need to keep quite front of mind for two reasons. One, it's partly the fact that we've got a very good insurance roadmap in front of us, and there clearly is, all work's important, but clearly the next phase that you're doing in 24, 25, I think you've said by sort of Christmassy time, was really important. So I can see us to think about that. The other thing which to me is really important is that we integrate this, well, if we haven't already, with our thinking around our strategic risks. And I would like to think more embracively, not just about climate change, not just about earthquakes, but some of our broader disaster response, because of some of the possible, could even be probable if we look at the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne and what have you, unrecognised liabilities if we have to buy out Category 3 homes. So it is that there is a bigger piece of work here that I think this is a tremendous lead into, but we need to be more. Be more. That sounds wrong. That's pejorative. There will be value in us integrating this into our broader strategic thinking about the total risk. So climate change, our earthquake proneness, our readiness for disaster, and indeed what could be the other liabilities we might have to in the future think about funding. So it's been very helpful. Been a very good couple of weeks, hopefully, Andy, for you, with us, that actually, hopefully we've heard the message. I suppose we should test that by looking at the resolution, which is recognising, by the way, we've got a confidential update really on just straight contractual negotiations, that we receive the information. We note the work plan, and we've talked a fair bit about that, and the renewal updates. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Rebecca. Any discussion on the motion? Being none, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh.
I feel like I'm failing in my role here.
That's right. Yeah. Steve would have slapped, despite the health and safety risk, he would have slapped me around the ears by now, I would have thought. So there we go. Right. One of the joys for John and I is we're full of accounting matters today, which is really superb, isn't it, John? So you're excited today. Accounting for interest, very a really important thing. So if we could, Dean, is it? Thank you, Dean. Appreciate you being here, buddy, and hear your thoughts on this one.
So again, I'll perhaps open with a few opening comments. This has been an ongoing discussion that we've had on how we best account for interest on works in progress. So what we have done here is we've created a paper and looked at this in three specific aspects. The first aspect that we've looked at is this achievable under accounting standards? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. We can capitalise interest under accounting standards. That is very common in the private sector, but we know that across local government and central government, this is not an active practice. The second element is to that is looking at whether or not we can do this under legislation. And we haven't drawn a firm conclusion here, but what I would note is I would suggest that it's probably not sensible to do so. Because under the Local Government Act, we are required to manage our finances in a prudent way. And when you look at what that means in terms of capitalising interest, that's looking at how we sort of fund these assets over and the borrowings that we have over the long term. And certainly when we look at this from a Local Government Act perspective, it certainly doesn't seem to meet the prudence test in terms of our advice to you. The third element is that we have obviously gone back to what is being said across the sector, particularly through our auditors, or in particular the Office of the Auditor General, given he or she is our auditor at any point in time. And there's a significant piece of work done on accounting standards and back in 2009, I believe it was, where they looked at the applicability of those accounting standards for the public sector. And there were some concerns expressed back at that time because we were separating out some of these distinctions between what private sector was doing and what the public sector was doing. And they have, of course, noted the complexities with moving to capitalising interest costs through that process as well, in particular because you don't necessarily have standard ways to revalue assets when you take that approach in the public sector on the basis that we revalue our assets, which is on depreciated replacement cost. So there's a number of factors that we have considered within this paper, and ultimately, as a result of that, we are recommending that we retain the current accounting policy. We believe that is the most appropriate policy for a local authority. We believe it's the most appropriate policy for our council, particularly the way that we manage our debt. We would require significant additional resources if we were to capitalise interest and manage that accordingly. And we also feel that that's supported in terms of advice from key stakeholders as well. So, look, that's the key message within the paper itself, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I guess I just wanted to check, because he's not here, if a conversation has been had with Councillor Brown, as this idea started with him about this paper.
So we've had ongoing conversations with Councillor Brown, and it's fair to say that he disagrees with us. So, and that's his prerogative, right? So I just want to make that clear. Yeah.
Yes, Ray.
In paragraph C.
Page.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. His page numbers will be different.
Oh, they're different, are they?
Whatever this page is here.
Well, which part? There are two attachments as well as also the main item. Which whereabouts in the paper are you, Ray? Paragraph C of what? Sorry, C of what paragraph?
Yep, 3C.
3C.
Oh, in the recs.
Oh.
What's this? This is an amendment.
This one here?
It's an amended substantive.
Yes, sorry. Substantive.
Who provided the amended?
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I thought we should. Sorry. The intention here is if we are going to adopt the recommendation,
yes.
not to change to keep the status quo, we should record the reasons why. And I was just trying to get the paragraph in the executive summary which records the reasons.
Yeah.
So yes,
Okay.
C. What about it?
Yeah.
Ray?
Okay, so my question is that in here you've listed quite a few reasons not to sort of proceed with this change. And under 3C, you've got significant concerns raised by council officers, auditors and the Auditor General. Now, are these comments back from them, these reasons here that we've come up with, or have they come up with something different?
No, we have copied the information from their public reports on this matter into this paper and referenced that accordingly.
Okay, great, thank you.
I would record the fact, and probably I should be able to remember this for other roles I've played in my life, Ray. 2009 was important because that was the second round of long-term plans. So for the Office of the Auditor General, this concept of whether interest should be capitalised was quite current in terms of the thinking within the sector. So it was at that point the Auditor General looked at this and did put out this, I guess, well, it's not an edict, but these comments that in principle that is not appropriate for the public sector to capitalise interest. So, and I think what you're saying, Andrea, is that as far as we know, the Office of the Auditor General haven't changed their approach yet.
We've confirmed via the auditor that that approach has not changed.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yes, Ona.
Andrea, I think this has been a useful exercise. It was an interesting report. But I'm just wondering in terms of our systems, so that the next time, in 6 years, that a councillor comes up with this idea, that this will all be able to be retrieved because it had already been done with Dr. Lavery and yes.
Yeah, and absolutely. But what I would say, it's really healthy to review our accounting policies periodically. So I'll speak for myself, maybe not the team. It's been a really good exercise to go through. So while we can look back at previous decisions that have been made, it's really good to look at the current context and understand what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, and whether or not that advice is still fit for purpose. So it would be, in my view, quite prudent to revisit this in 3 or 6 years' time. Of course, we'd give regard to what we said now, but we'd look at the merits on that basis as well.
So following on from that, can that be regularly scheduled in? And I presume it would be all the accounting policies, not just...
It's absolutely all of the accounting policies. And can I just... I'll plug another report on the agenda. Actually, we have the pro formas on the agenda, which I'm sure you've all read with delight, and those accounting policies are in there, and this is absolutely the time where my team have gone through all of those accounting policies and questioned whether or not they're the right ones for us to be using, and are also bringing them to you to say this is what we're proposing, and and for that conversation to occur.
Yes, Wendy.
Just a comment. I think that's very much support what Andrew was just saying. I found it a really, maybe it was the accountant to me.
Exciting, did you say?
I found it a very useful and well put together paper. So I just wanted to thank the officers involved doing it. I have actually, interestingly, been seeing and wearing different hats, the same sort of question being raised, and this was a very comprehensive pros and cons and really well supported by the information. So I just wanted to, as I read it, I wrote good paper and make sure I made that point.
Thank you, Wendy.
Can I just also acknowledge, so Dean was very involved in this. Sophie also just at the back of the room was also very involved in this as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge her.
Thank you, Faye. So, minor comment from me. I mean, I'm comfortable with the proposed recommendations, although we'll just come back to those in a moment. And again, Dean found the paper very helpful. Possibly for various reasons I spent more time than I thought I would have reading it, but I found it interesting. What has, apart from my general knowledge, convinced me, by the way, was on page 26 of the agenda, where you talk about, where PwC talk about IPSAS 5, it's quite clear that the standard, while it does allow the alternative of treatment, which is what Councillor Brown in particular has been urging us to look at, actually the capitalisation of interest is incredibly conservative. The moment there is a hint of a stall in a project, you start expensing.
Yeah.
And I mean, without trying to read intent into the standard setters, it's clear to me that actually you do so very carefully and only in very, quite frankly, narrow grounds. So it does suggest that I struggle with the value proposition of the resource it would take for us to actually do that. So that's the measurement side, what we would report in the annual report. I just want to draw the committee's attention to really the shorthand, I think, of the paper and what you've said, Andrea. There's also the funding side. If you go to the model, why would you impose an extra $5 million on your ratepayers? And actually, a future generation to boot. I mean, what the hell? Sorry, no, I couldn't use that word. What do we get accused of? Kicking the can down the road. So take the lolly now, but make somebody else pay. That's that in a somewhat colloquial way doesn't make a lot of sense. So, pardon? But it's an interesting thing. If you're talking about time value of money, yeah, which is fair enough too. But it doesn't make necessarily a lot of sense. Yes, Tony. Pardon? Okay. So look, can we look at the resolution? Because actually, Ona, my attempt here, as I was trying to think about this paper, was actually we do record the reasons in the resolution rather than it just being, hey, we accept the recommendations. So, because I agree, they should be, over time, re-looked at in the way that Andrea has spoken about, but actually, if we are going to adopt the status quo, we should state the reasons. Now, I was lazy, sorry. I wanted to replicate what is the equivalent of, let me just find it again, sorry. I'm on the wrong paper. Paragraph 8 of our paper, which says that while capitalised interest would initially provide a limited benefit to ratepayers, such a change in accounting policy would result in yada, 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 and we find those convincing. So my proposition is that we would repeat that as the reasons why we would not change from status quo. Any comments on that? I'm just trying to build this as we go. Make certain. Yes, John.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's quite useful to have a degree of the rationale around it as opposed to going for it, because I think if you go back to the position 10 years ago, wherever it was, we were in such a different state and we weren't having to rebuild a whole bunch of assets as well. So this does give good clarity.
So on that basis, given I've made the changes, I will move it. Do I have a seconder, please? Yes, Tony? Thank you. Right, I think you wanted to make a comment or debate comment. Tony, your floor is yours.
So you're not going to speak to it? So,
no, I think I've said enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first of all, thank you very much for the work that's been done on this. And also thanks to Councillor Brown for raising this opportunity. I've been, not being a financial person myself, I do find some of these areas very confusing. And when someone with the business experience of Councillor Brown and also Councillor Panovich come along and say it would be a good idea to do this, then I think we need to take that take that seriously. I've learned a lot about how finances work and how, during this and other processes. And I also think that it's still, even though we're saying this, we're not going to go ahead, we now fully understand and have explored why, a financial mechanism that works in the private sector is not appropriate for the public sector. And that gives a soundness, I think, and it's exactly what, good financial processes are about. We should always explore ideas where there's a potential win, and if it doesn't turn out to be a win or not the right thing, then it's absolutely right to say, actually, no. So I think this has been a very useful exercise. I thank everyone for working that through and also taking me and the other councillors through this so that we can get confidence that we're on the right track. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Yes, Ray.
Thanks very much for that. And I think I also reiterate what Councillor Randall has just said, that I've actually gotten a lot out of this because, again, not coming from the public sector, I look at things quite differently and how we do things in the business sort of area. But I think and also because the decisions were made in a previous council that we know nothing about, the Auditor General's ruling, of course, these things that we don't have time to sort of go back and read these things to understand exactly how we came to this position. But I think that one comment, I'd just like to make a comment on what you said about not putting a debt onto future generations on what we do now simply to save some money for the current generation. But every day when I go out and talk to people, every day people tell me that the cost of living is worse than it's ever been, and as far as they can remember, it's very bad. So we do need to look at these things, and we do need to try and find savings. We do need to try and explore ways of trying to make savings for people, because it is very, very hard. So yes, we don't want to load the future generations up with debt, but in fact, that's what we're doing. Every time we borrow $1, we're putting that onto future generations. So, but I think this debate has been very good, and I've said I agree with this, and I'll be voting for it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray. Do you want to move on? No? Any other comment from folk? Okay, in that case, can I suggest we move to the motion? Yes, thank you for raising that, John. I need the reminder. Can we please vote? They ever make a bloopers of council meetings, I'll focus on me forgetting to use this thing, won't they? Thank you. By the way, and Liz, I hope you can hear. Great to have you on board. Just want to recognise, I know you're there in the ether somewhere, so great to have you with us. Can we move to the health and safety report? Welcome, you guys. Great to have you here. This is one where I presume you guys will lead off. Is that right? Thank you.
Morena, everyone. We take the paper as read, but I just wanted to comment on a couple of items within the report. The first being the safety management system review, which is completed now. This has been a large project that's taken us over 10 months to review the current information that we've had, as well as develop some new documents and information. This is really the start of providing consistency across the organisation with all things health and safety. It is a start. We know that it will evolve over time as well, and more documents will be added as required and needed. But it will add to the consistency of managing health and safety, which is fantastic. We now have a really good suite of information, which anyone can and has access to within the workforce. The other thing is the critical risk review, another significant project that has involved a lot of cross-council teams being involved in this project. We've run 199 workshops, which has demonstrated the engagement in this project with all teams. As a result of that, we've had over 500 actions generated, and we hope to have a report for the next quarterly audit and risk meeting. But yeah, both these projects have come to the end, and it's just great to have that engagement across the organisation. So other than that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, appreciate that. Folk, do we have questions for TJ or Wendy? Could I just ask a couple of comments or make a couple of comments and questions? Firstly, well done. Can I just say, actually, I wanted to focus that the commitment you've had to make the full analysis around the critical risks and indeed the engagement of the health and safety reps. Our best defence is the engagement of the organisation in it, and I just want to encourage that sort of thinking and that work done, and also and acknowledge that it has been done. I'd be very keen as we go forward for you to come back with, your sense of commitment from the organisation to a health and safety culture, and indeed enabling all these people, 108 active reps in their work. It's wrong to say it's extramural, because I know you want us to think of health and safety as just BAU, but the reality of it is on top of their day job in lots of ways, and I'm very keen that they are affirmed from at least this table, if not council full stop, and I know it will be council as well, in terms of the work that they're actually doing for themselves and for ourselves. So I just want to encourage that. Look, at paragraph 10, I'm interested, it just piqued my interest. How do you assess the efficacy of controls at 74%? Because I don't, it's my terms of reference, is that good or bad? that's a bit black and white, but you know where I'm getting to.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to look at that 74% as a big aggregate and draw one single conclusion. If you look through all of the data, and you'll get this detail in the full analysis report next quarter, if you look at all of the controls that were identified in the conversations and then how the groups rated themselves in terms of efficacy and then our kind of opinion on efficacy as well, there was nothing extremely critical that jumped out. And so we see that the balance, the 24%, as being the above and beyond mitigation. There aren't any essential controls that required immediate rectification.
Great. That's actually a really important qualification. Can I say that, TJ? Is actually that you're comfortable that with this assessment, let's call it, even if it's a self-assessment, that actually the 26%, by the way, if my math is correct, is not a big issue. That's really comforting to know, and I think we should just note that for the minutes that is the response. Can I ask a question? And this is about really our system. So at paragraph 20, you said, given there were no critical risk safety observations scheduled for January and into February, I don't want to sound like a mean employer here, but our risks don't stop. Is that wise that we have no observations in January and February, when in fact, I think elsewhere in the paper we record the place is pretty busy, whether it's our swimming pools, whether it's our parks and reserves, beaches, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I just want to confirm it. It's December and January.
Oh, okay.
And that's mostly due to availability of people.
Right.
But if there is desire from the table to go on critical risk safety observations over those months, we're more than happy to facilitate it.
I think what I'm trying to ask is, I'm looking for your advice on that one, TJ, which is, I'm looking at this from the due diligence perspective of duty holders.
Yeah.
That one of the things we're looking for is a system of verification.
Absolutely.
And we'll get into sampling and techniques like that, but I guess the question I ultimately want to know is actually how critical are these observations to us having 12 months comfort in terms of it, rather than what clearly has been a 6-week gap or whatever it is, whether that's wise. So I'm thinking about it from the effectiveness of managing the total system of support around health and safety.
Yeah, I'm comfortable that in isolation, this particular activity, if it didn't happen in December and January, doesn't pose significant risk to the overall system. Noting there's other verification action happening all the time. So there's observations happening at an operational level almost every day. And so if there were things of concern, they would be raised through other avenues. I think what this particular activity does is give you that real in-person assurance that things are happening. It would be surprising to find something in December and January that you wouldn't find any other month of the year.
Brilliant. Okay. Look, and my final question is, and perhaps it's a chance for you to correct me here. I'm I'm perhaps concerned about even my getting used to this. And I just wanted to ask the question over personal confrontation at paragraph 38. It's an ongoing, non-decreasing risk with my notes. And perhaps it's a question to myself rather than all of us, but I will put it in the all of us. Are we becoming normalised to this risk? And it's just, what's our phrase? It goes with the territory.
It's a hard question to answer. I think in some ways, yes, it is becoming normalised, but recognising that that is a natural behaviour, we have put a lot of effort into educating the organisation on the importance of recognising this behaviour and recognising that it's not okay to accept it. That has then influenced the number of reports that we're getting as well. And so while it is increased in volume, our reporting has increased in volume as well. And so I think there's probably less acceptance of this behaviour in our workforce based off of the conversations that we've had, if that answers your question.
No, look, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. It's easy for me to just say, confrontation, yada, yada, yada. But actually, it is so in your face. I don't have to deal with it, but I'm conscious that many, including councillors, have to. So I'm just concerned. Yes, Laurie.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming off the personal confrontation, I just wanted to get reclarification on the departments or what areas is this coming through, and just in terms of what impact is that having on staff retention. Anything to drill deeper on that?
I can answer the first part of the question, which is it's coming from all areas of our front-facing staff or any public interaction that staff have. So it happens in our social media teams, in our call centres, libraries, rec centres, parking. Wherever there's interaction with the public, there are examples of personal confrontation. It is not surprising that there's higher volumes in areas like parking, but equally we're seeing it in libraries. So there's no real one area. I don't have the specific relationship with staff retention off the top of my head, but it is a line of questioning that I can take away and come back to you with.
That would be useful, thank you. Just another couple of questions on asset failure. Are there any particular areas or patterns that are forming out of that?
There aren't any distinct patterns that we've recognised, other than we know that we have a lot of assets and some of them are getting on.
Yep.
There's nothing of concern in terms of a systematic pattern.
Okay, and so we do have in our LTPs the ability the budgets are there to replace assets as and when needed?
I would probably defer.
Yeah. Sorry, TJ.
And here's the money bags.
No, absolutely. Within our asset management plans, we certainly do have an amount of reactive maintenance kind of budget that can go into where there is asset failure to be able to look at those. Of course, if it was a substantial asset failure, we may not have sufficient budget, but we can certainly have enough to make things safe in the short term to react, and then we'd come to you for any kind of major decision.
Thank you, Andrea. And just one more question on staff mental health. Just how are we measuring that in here, and is it possible in the future we could have a breakout of that? And just a bit on the trend nationwide, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's potentially some information in some of the staff surveys that we do, particularly the annual engagement survey, which includes some wellbeing questions that we could bring back to the table.
I would like to start seeing that broken out because it personally a concern. So just, if there's a way we could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Laurie. It's not the first time today with these papers that we've said let's integrate our thinking with strategic risk, retention of staff, that sort of stuff, which makes a lot of sense. Geordie.
Yeah, I wanted to start off with a congratulations. I'm looking at one beautiful graph in particular where the average reporting and assessment delay is just like falling straight down, which is really impressive and I think really speaks to the work that you're doing. I heard one question about what a near miss for a personal confrontation looks like.
This is a hard one, again, to answer straightforward. It can look different for different people. So the way that we measure it is on the kind of impact that it had on the individual. So, for example, if I was abused in the street, I may not respond the same way that another staff member may. So I may not be impacted mentally in the same way. And so for me, it might have been a near miss. For somebody else, it might have been an incident. And so it's a little bit grey. It's our greyest sort of category of event. So we don't tend to deeply analyse the separation of near miss versus incidents when it comes to personal confrontation. We just look at personal confrontation as a thing that happened as an overall event.
Awesome, yeah. And then my other question was, in this report I'm seeing us comparing ourselves to us in the past, but I'm wondering in sort of our health and safety work, how we assess that against perhaps, I guess, external factors and our responses to them, like how are we performing in comparison with other councils or other people operating within Wellington who have similar roles?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and we've just started conversations with our technology provider for our health and safety system, who also service a range of other councils across New Zealand, and there is appetite through those group conversations that we've had to do this kind of comparison reporting, so I'm hoping that we can start bringing that sometime soon.
It's beautiful, thank you.
Thanks, Geordie. Ray.
I'm very concerned about health and safety, and I received a email from a member of the public who goes to the Johnsville Library quite a lot, and he sent this report to me about an incident that happened there. And so he said that someone came in abusing staff, and we had security people there, but they just stood by and did nothing. And so I've had a discussion with the Johnsonville centre manager about this, and she said, "Oh yes, I know about that." And I said, so what's happening? She says, "Oh, well, I just know about it." And so I'm trying to escalate this now to understand exactly what happened. Why is it that we have a member of the public complaining about behaviour of people in talking to our staff?
Ray, I'm very happy you've raised this question, but I think that should be raised outside this committee. I'm glad that you've raised it in the sense of it's reflecting the reality of what life is like for a centre manager or indeed our librarians. But it's getting close on the personal, and we are in public. So could I encourage you to catch up with Wendy and TJ after to follow through on your attempt to raise that, please?
Yep, sure. Happy to do that.
I accept the validity of your concern, but this is not quite the venue for that to be discussed in. Thank you. Wendy.
Thank you. And I guess I just had a question, and well, probably some general questions too, but just on the personal confrontation, I'm just carrying on here. You sort of do emphasise that you're looking at need for additional support and what others are doing. Are you able to give us a flavour of what that might look like, or what other organisations are exploring?
Absolutely. So we're just about to, or in the final details of confirming what a mentoring / coaching type arrangement might be with an external counselling provider that will provide the teams that we're piloting with a different kind of mechanism to diffuse the kind of emotional build-up that they experience throughout the day and throughout what might be lots of little personal confrontation events that can accumulate into a big impact. So this is something that we haven't done in the past that we're testing to see whether there is of value for people. That's one specific example.
And I guess just my two general questions, I guess, would be just it's really good to see the continuing progress and the promise of more. What are you most pleased about, I guess, looking back since the last time you report, and also what are you still most concerned about?
I think for me it's the engagement across the organisation. So if I look at our health and safety journey over the last couple of years, really, we've been able to set a clear direction for the organisation on where we're heading. We kicked off with a safety culture review, which gave us a benchmark. We're pleased to note that we've had another review done, and we're hoping to bring that report back to the next committee as well in terms of where, as an organisation, that shift has happened. We're hoping it's in a positive way. But I think for me, it's definitely we've set a foundation and we are growing, and the organisation is responding and engaging. And I think that's the key thing around health and safety, is that it's not just one team that's driving this. It's actually we've raised that awareness and we've started that journey.
Thank you, Wendy.
And what are you still concerned about?
It's a hard one. I mean, I don't think I have any concerns as such. I think I'm looking forward to using that new engagement or increased engagement that we have with the organisation to discover things that perhaps we didn't know about before, so that we can then take action. So I'm looking forward to the continuous improvement that is ahead of us.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for your question. Thank you all. Can we move to the recommendation, please, on page 35 of our agendas, which is that we receive the report. Do I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Rebecca.
Can I speak briefly?
Yeah, go for it.
I guess I just want to thank the team for their work and been interesting to listen to the answers to the questions. And I guess I've been reflecting, whenever these kind of personal confrontation stories are shared with us, it's a massive concern to all of us as elected members. And I guess I just want to note at the moment we're doing a difficult engagement with some difficult decisions in our LTP. And so I think daily I'm seeing for the comms and engagement team, and particularly through social media, some very concerning, and that I can, like anybody would be, it would affect their mental health, I think, and that I guess just to emphasise that I hope the public is very well aware that when they are making these comments, the person that is dealing with them is one of our kaimahi, is not a decision maker, and is doing the best to provide the information that the public seek, and to just keep that in mind when people make those comments. Thank you.
Rebecca, do I have a seconder? Yes, thank you, Wendy. Any further comments? No? Thank you, Ray. Can we take our remotes, please, and vote? That'd be great. Great. Thank you for that. And thank you for, Wendy and TJ have gone. Assurance and business update. Rich and John, welcome to the table, please. Thank you for your paper, and look, a personal thanks that you squeezed the charter in there rather than leaving that till the next meeting. These folk got a request from me that we include the charter for a comprehensive view. Yeah, a comprehensive review of the not only just the work program, but we have got the right settings in place for you guys to do your hard work, which is tremendous. So, in your hands, Rich and John, you lead off, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that the responsiveness of John and his team, I'd like to commend the work that he does, and also the commitment to whakapaiake, continuous improvement, looking ahead at the new standards, which we mentioned in the paper. Just a couple of other things I'd like to single out, and then John could talk. Some of the responses to some of our audits have been great, and we've singled out Haining Street in this paper, the improvements that have been made by Paul McCorry and his team, who needs commending as well, and he's going to come and join us in a minute to talk to that.
Yes, g'day, Paul.
The last thing, thank you for your participation in the workshop last month and the audit planning workshop. We've included one extra paper, I think, which is the long list of audits which we talked about, which shows you what else we considered before deciding on what we want to your approval.
And Richard stole my thunder about Haining Street. As far as taking papers as read, there's a few updates. So in attachment 1 on the status of the current plan, I'm happy to report that the commercial leases audit has now completed field work, and we are pushing forward with the report. Ideally, that will be out to the business in kind of early next week. I'm afraid there are 2 errors which the Eagle Eye may have noticed. So in attachment 2, there is no table 3. This is a hangover from previous draft where we had the Haining Street actions tabled there. And in attachment 5, the Takina operations would have sat under strategy and governance, not delivery and infrastructure. Just to echo Rich's comments on Haining Street, I think it's a great example of the work which the team do. It kind of demonstrates that working better together ethic, and the work which Paul and his team have done to kind of improve operations is really commendable. Final comment on the charter. So we have submitted that in its current form. If the committee agrees the updated standards, there is a minor amendment to make to that, which we'll get to in due course.
Thank you, John. Paul, can I invite you here? Look, I've had the privilege of catching up with Paul over John and Rich's follow-up on Haining Street, and I just invited Paul to be present for questions. But given I've called you up, mate, is there anything you want to say as a result of that whole Haining Street experience and where your unit's at now?
Kia ora, team. Yeah, like you guys will know that we, in June last year, before we had even got the risk and assurance review, we had undertaken proposed a number of work streams to strengthen the programme. And so I think I was comforted in some way by seeing the review that Risk and Assurance did, because it aligned with what we were thinking as a business unit as to where we needed to improve. I think the core focus of what we looked at and what we improved on was sort of twofold. One was people and capability, and the other side was, I guess, process and documentation. Yeah, I mean, the program will always remain a risky program, and so I think that's why one of the things that we have agreed to do is to report back to the Audit and Risk Committee on an annual basis of any increasing risks. But we're not going to be able to absolve ourselves of risk working in this sort of environment. I mean, a commercial negotiation is really just an apportionment of risk between two parties, and so the program is not any less risky than it was. But what it is, or what we have done, is put council hopefully in a better position to actually manage that risk going forward. But yeah, happy if there's any specific questions that people have about the programme, more than happy to chat about them.
Brilliant. Look, no, thank you for that, Paul. That's really helpful to personalise why we've now got a good rating in your area. So compliments to you and the team on that one. That's great to know, but actually good to characterise it. So, folk, do we have questions? Yes, Iona.
First of all, need some guidance on process, because I'm wondering if some of the questions I want to ask in public and with staff present are actually appropriate. So maybe could we do have some council only time at the end, don't we? But can
would you like Paul back at that stage? Sorry, I'm assuming it might be Paul you're after.
No,
no, oh,
no,
okay.
And I fully support Paul, but no, I
okay,
think
Paul's off the hook.
An organisation, but not just yet, Paul.
Yeah.
Look, I support the Te Kāinga program, and I think sometimes you do need to try something brave to do something. But these people are hard-nosed. Do you feel confident that we've got enough hard-nosed people so if we do go and do some more building again, which we may need to do, that this won't be repeated, because we've obviously had another episode of dealing with property developers too, which didn't go so well.
I think there's probably a twofold answer to that question. One, not all developers are hard-nosed. Some of them do have a sort of, they understand the outcomes that we're wanting from this programme, and they understand the sort of philanthropic view that you need to take to be able to deliver on an affordable housing programme. So I think part of what we have established through our process is a development assessment and selection criteria, which would just, I guess, make us more attuned as to who we do business with. And then in terms of the capability within the team, one of the key focuses of my follow-up work and the management actions to the review was a restructure of my team. And so looking at those skills and capabilities that we need with a particular lens on strategic delivery and commercial negotiation. And so I'm going through a process at the moment of recruiting into 2 roles into my team that will assist with the delivery of the programme. And so, yeah, I think we will be in a really good place to continue the programme and to deal with the development community. And I think selecting the development partners that we work with and having a clear idea as to what we will and will not agree to and what we do want from this programme puts us in a much better position.
And will we not deal with some people?
I couldn't say. That would be on a case-by-case basis.
But you would do some background checking?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct,
okay. Yeah. And the people you're recruiting, that have a commercial background?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for not just Paul, but actually for Rich and yes, Ray?
I have a question for Paul, and I guess I'm just asking for your view on these things, is that the way that we structured the Te Kāinga program, do you think that in view of the things that we've actually struck, the issues that we struck, do you think that we actually need to tweak that at all, or do you think that we need to actually look at a different way of doing things, or maybe even modify how we do things, or in view of the current economic situation and the issues with the cost of building and that sort of thing, is it still valid what we do?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the way that we look at the programme is very much on a case-by-case basis, and if a developer brings an innovative idea to us, we'll definitely look at it, but we'll have a very risk lens to how we look at things, because you'll you'll recall that the core principle of the programme is not just to provide affordable rents, but to do so in a way that's cost neutral to ratepayers. And so that needs to be protected with whatever decisions that we make. But yeah, I mean, cost of construction is one of the unique parts of the Tikanga programme where we predominantly look at building conversions, which drastically reduces that cost of construction. And so that's one of the unique aspects of the programme that make it particularly useful in the current economic environment.
Thanks, Ray. Yes, go. One more.
And so thank you for that. And in view of that, I'm trying to sort of balance things. And so because we're trying to balance one of the objectives is to get affordable housing, is that still even possible in in the current climate with costs sort of increasing significantly? So how can we actually do this? Like how can we actually manage both sides of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at the moment the biggest challenge from a development partner point of view is their interest rate and their interest cover ratio for some of these deals. So it's definitely harder to do than it would be in a low interest rate environment. But developers are actually quite keen to get involved with Wellington City Council, specifically on an affordable housing programme. So I don't think there's any difficulty or danger of us not being able to attract people to work with. It just makes it a little bit more difficult for them to work out on their end. But part of the review of this programme is us having core commercial principles that we need from the programme, and so as long as we stick to them, we will get into deals that do allow us to provide affordable housing and won't get into ones that don't.
Thanks for the question, Ray. There's a full suite of papers here. Paul, you've done very well. I'm not going to say we can't have more questions to Paul, but there is an important set of other papers here. Have folk got questions? I do, so I might as well kick off. John, it's not, and I appreciate we're looking at the future work plan. I just want to sow a seed in your mind rather than saying we're missing something. I noticed on page 52, you're scheduled for Q4 financial delegations. For reasons which are confidential and entirely different council, I've come across also the question of non-financial delegations, and actually have we got those right and who can make decisions. This is particularly in the regulatory area. I'm just wanting to sow the seeds that somewhere down the track, not this year, I might be interested to know how we manage and how good we are in the equivalent side of, financial delegations, registers, yada, yada, yada. How good are we from a non-financial delegation, the warrants, the ability to deal with bylaws, consents, etc., whether we've got that one right. Rich, you're about to break into something. You've done to it, have you? You've cleared us.
Certainly not wanting to predetermine any audit result. What the council does have, we've adopted LocoSoft, which is adopted by other councils. It documents all of our statutory delegations, appoints named officers, named roles of officers across warrants, as well as each relevant delegable power under each act. So we've got a good register.
Yes.
I think we'll wait for the audit to find out how well it's working.
Great. Yes, I have to be careful that I don't then say to you which client I'm talking about. But yes, I appreciate that. John, with page 53, just want to reflect the customer inquiries, complaints and escalation. And I think it's been, am I right? Well, it's going to happen now next year. I think it says Q2, 24, 25, right? I'm reading that correctly? This is page 53. What did I say? 24. Page 53 of the agenda. You've got attachment 2, status of recommendations. The cross council initiative will require input from a broad range of teams. Planning and resource confirmation is expected to be completed in the business year, with scheduled to commence in Q2.
So we gave this a deadline of, I believe it was December 24. So it will be next financial year, but
yeah. I'm very keen to see the results of that.
Okay.
Sorry, is really what I'm trying to say. The complaint system is important. Even if I go back to Ray's question, I'm not saying necessarily a complaint, but actually how do we deal with our systems for complaints? I know we have trouble, according to Karen, counting our waters complaints, but I think more broadly I'm interested seriously that actually our inquiry complaint process is nailed. So I'll be very keen in the new year when you've had the time to actually see that one through. That's tremendous. We dealt with Paul. Thank you, Paul. That's good. You've answered my questions. I'm very interested, and I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to page, gee whiz, what one is it? It's the assurance map, key assurance activities across council. Thank you for this, Rich. I find this very interesting. I just want to reflect to my members. Our role is to deal with strategic risk and assurance. And I found this very worthwhile read because actually it's giving us a sense of, as you've talked about, John, the lines of defence and actually where some of our current work is being put into, indeed where our future work could go. So I know it's on the paper, I know we need to pass resolutions, but I would recommend this to you as committee members to spend time on, because it's actually gives me a sense of comfort. Yes, John, you got a comment?
No, just changing.
So look, that's good for me. So look, the only other comment I had was on the charter. And I love the brevity of this charter. Probably a number of charters I've seen are a tad longer. And I don't want to increase its length. I think the comment I would make, and it's inherent in what is said here, but it's actually the last bullet point, which is my keenness to defend the quasi-independence of the internal auditor and the capacity to talk directly with the chief executive or indeed this committee on just cause, but without reference to anybody else. And I would like to see that strengthened to indicate your capacity to come to this committee directly with your concerns. If that's a tweak you could make, but if you want to leave it the way it is, that's fine. I just want to record that for the coming year, as it will every year we look at the charter, I am insistent that we recognise as an organisation your what I call your quasi-independence and capacity to come and talk particularly directly with us, but of course clearly the chief executive as well. So with that, folk, those were my questions, and again I perhaps tried to reflect some of the other papers. Is there any other questions members would like to make? No? I did ask one other question, Rich, before you go away. Risk maturity. I was just interested to know where we might be going with when we might be going with our next risk maturity assessment or self-assessment.
Thank you. I was going to bring that up in the next paper, but
okay. Well, do you want to leave it to
it's
next
fine.
paper?
I can cover it off now. We last reviewed our risk maturity as an organisation. I think it reported back to this committee September 22. That showed that we were on an upward improvement trajectory at that point across all aspects of that framework. It's a risk maturity framework that's used. I think it's developed and run by DIA, Department of Internal Affairs. We haven't run it this year because of strange resources in the risk space, and it's due back to this committee in February 25. It's on the dot chart.
Great. Look, I appreciate it's part of risk, but it's also, it's a sort of essentially an internal audit. That's why I've raised it now. That's great. Well, that's brilliant. I'm comfortable with the proposed program. Thank you for what didn't make it onto the list. That was a request from the workshop, as you quite rightly said, John. I wondered, because I think you might have wanted to make some brief comment around the alignment with the international standards. Was there anything there that you needed to raise before I look at the recommendations?
I think the main thing I'd like to add is that while we're embarking on this kind of program of enhancing internal controls from core to good, one of the great things about the standards is it gives us a great opportunity to demonstrate how we are leading by example, recognising that there is kind of international guidance on how we deliver our function, and in turn improving ourselves to kind of align with those standards.
Yep, I'm comfortable. Absolutely. Okay, can we go to the recommendations? I don't sense the committee's got anything more to add at this stage, which is that we receive the information, and there are a number of matters there. We haven't focused on gifts and hospitality, but you've seen the returns to date, the progress on the closure of the recommendations, that we are approving the work plan for 24-25, and this follows on from our workshop, and that we are approving the internal audit charter as well, and that we agree the assurance and business integrity work towards the adoption of the global internal audit standards. And I think there was a suggestion to be in addition to the words and update the charter to include that commitment. I'm comfortable with that we just tidy up our commitment to the global internal audit standards. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that motion, please? Thank you, Ray. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, John. Any discussion on the motion? Doesn't appear to be any. I'll put the motion. Can you please use your remotes? Whew, good save, Bruce. I'm warming up. I'm going to suggest in about 5 minutes we make a break so that those, Tori, I think you've got to go at 11. We've got a chance for a quick cup of tea before we reconvene at 11. But let's just see if we can't. Well, can we deal with the next paper? Of course we can. Please, strategic risks and fit for purpose review of the risk management framework. Thanks, Rich.
Kia ora anō. I'll let the paper speak for itself. For the record, I've included the slides that were presented at the workshop in April, otherwise they might get lost. We are recruiting a specialist dedicated resource to replace somebody who left last year, and I've noticed that there are some errors that I made in the attachment with the matrix on page 93 of your papers. I just wanted to point those out, and that's entirely my fault. So the narrative doesn't match what's in the coloured chart on that page, but when we get this eagle-eyed dedicated specialist, those errors will be corrected. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, there, Rich. So, look, and you're covering, so I appreciate that, and I don't mean that in any nasty sense, other than I recognise that we need it's wrong to say a new Kim, we need a risk manager, which is actually reasonably important. But equally, members, we are a risk committee, so I am interested whether folk have any comments or views they'd like to express about our risk environment at the moment. And of course, it's represented by what we see as strategic risks. I am very conscious, of course, that in a yet to be identified date, isn't it, Rich, we are going to have the second risk workshop where we will actually look at specifically what is our strategic risk environment. But I'm open for any brief or short comments folk would like to make at this stage. Anybody? No? Yes, Iona. And then Laurie.
So I had a couple of community meetings last night and I got a lot of quite angry people, but that's fine because that's what we're here to do. Just around affordability, that they're just starting to struggle. So I'm just wondering in terms of the process for adding new risks on, if we did have a mind at some point, what is the way to do that?
I think the point would be, and perhaps I'm just trying. I'm very comfortable that we acknowledge, shall we say, an emerging risk of affordability. I don't think at this point we don't even have the person to actually adjust this. Iona, we will have, I think in August, our second risk workshop, which follows on from the slides that we have here. Which will be dedicated to affirming or changing the nature of our risk environment. I think it's important that we recognise today, though, your comment that if I would endorse it. Not endorse it, is that the right word? Affirm affordability is probably right at the moment, sort of number one risk across the sector, as we all try and balance the books, if you will. And we're all struggling with doing that. That includes the particulars of the Wellington environment too, which is not good. Andrea?
I just also acknowledge, and I'll speak to it later on in the PX session when I speak to the committee around financial risks, but our financial strategy has affordability at the heart of it, and I think we have an opportunity as an audit and risk committee and bringing that information to you and how we're progressing against our financial strategy going forward. So that is certainly the intent as well. So outside of the risk, the regular conversations we have around affordability and making sure that that's really brought to the attention of the committee is important as well.
Interesting, actually. We're decreasing the risk on strategic planning, which is, I think, probably quite reasonable. But it doesn't mean that the effects of that strategic planning are any easier. Which comes then back to we now raises the challenge around affordability. Laurie, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to thank you for the workshop and the team that put that together. I found it kind of brought risk into a new level of thinking for me, and it was really useful and constructive. And I'm looking forward to the next one to see what we can glean and put through our processes. So yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the work on that.
Thank you. Any other comments you'd like to make? I'd just like to make a couple of contextual comments as well from what I'm seeing around the country. And I may be misusing the title, but adaptation to major change. Already, just from what I'm reading within the press, personally, I'm not involved. Clearly, it's probably appropriate with Three Waters reform. Sorry, whatever we call it, livable, whatever. Okay. Yeah. Point being, to some extent, and I do not discount affordability because of the particular impacts around Wellington and with public sector reform. I get that as being acute in contrast to elsewhere. There is significant change going on, and none of you have not seen what's happened in Auckland. And it strikes me that actually that puts the heat on us. I mean, I know there's a lot happening and seen some things in the paper as well. But I sense our need to be ready for ongoing change, and I am most interested in that. It's a bit like my comment on have I got normalised to a confrontation. I'm worried about earthquake risk and tsunami, not because we don't know it. But Rich, I'm very interested in actually re-looking from a deep dive perspective at actually, are we actually ready? Have we thought? Has the environment changed actually? And I mean that's been reflected, and I've tried to relate the insurance risk to that as well, and wrapping it up even with earthquake proneness. There's quite a bit in there which, if my colleagues in the Bay reflect. They said, Bruce, we did a lot of scenario planning around these sorts of risks for the Hawke's Bay, and what we experienced was double. We had not even anticipated what we received. And I'm just conscious that actually we could sit here fiddling, it's a bad analogy, while Rome burns. So I think I'd be very keen for us to recognise that while I doubt from a day-to-day perspective the risk or the environment has changed, it's actually something which I think we as a committee could help the council by on focusing on going forward.
Absolutely. I think the opportunity, and we do regularly review our risks, but as we develop proofs of concept under the new reporting format, we'll definitely do a deep dive into earthquake and tsunami to take those points on board.
Again, this is something which I'm certainly not going to raise more strongly when we get to our workshop, but I think it's important in terms of the form and function of the committee we recognise what our current environment is at this meeting. Ray.
Thanks very much for that, Bruce. I absolutely agree with you that the risks are actually, of all these things, are actually increasing, but I think that we have to be cognizant and very careful that we don't try and plan things for the worst possible situation. And as you said, in Hawke's Bay, it was twice as bad as what we actually planned for, expected. But I feel that there's always going to be a balance of things that we do. And if we plan to do everything at that very, very top level, then we're going to put a huge seawall around the whole country. And of course, it's just not feasible, and of course the cost is ridiculous. So of course we can't look at these huge disasters and say that yes, well, because we had that one in Hawke's Bay, we've now got to plan, to put a moat around here or something. We've got to balance what we think is probable rather than a big disaster that's actually happened, because we just can't afford to do these things.
Oh, look, I happily take on board your advice, Ray. And I wasn't, by the way, suggesting a Trump-like wall around Wellington in that sense. I'm just reflecting that it's a bit. I contextually raised this with: are we normalised to confrontation? Are we normalised to just seeing these risks sitting on our schedule? And actually, that's the importance of deep diving, is actually just keeping ourselves periodically up to date with it. Andrea, I think you had a comment. Looks like Rich has got a comment.
I think that's important, Ray, but I think we need to be showing that we turn our minds to the unexpected but catastrophic. And I think that that's the point that I would raise, that we need to be thinking about what's the worst that could possibly happen. We don't necessarily need to build for resilience for the worst that could possibly happen, but we need to understand what that could look like and where our risk tolerance is. And I think that that's an area in historical experience where I've noticed risks have transpired because people have not turned their mind to that unexpected but catastrophic kind of event. So I think it's really important. You've got to turn your minds to it. You don't necessarily build a wall to protect everything or build to protect, but you need to understand what that is.
Sorry, Rich first, Tony, because I think he was about to make a comment.
Thank you, Andrea. Just backing up exactly what Andrea says. Yes, our risks are defined as the worst possible, maximum credible scenario, but the actual mitigations are built around the most likely scenario. So.
Tony.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think having had that first briefing workshop was a good move, and I think I think as a councillor, I'd love us to keep working on a sort of a workshop basis, so that we can, rather than having you brief us on sort of what's happening, what's your view. Part of I think the sort of interaction is just to have opportunities where we can say, well, okay, what does risk say about an earthquake, and what's the mitigation, and is that, to have it more of a two-way conversation. So hopefully maybe in the second part of the year we can have that sort of two-way workshop around strategic risks, and have a turn that sort of principle that Andrea kindly outlined into reality a little bit more. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate that, and I think again, appreciate your support. That makes a lot of sense. Any other comments? No. Can we move to the recommendation then, please, which is, find it, I keep going past it. Sorry, yes, you're right. And here I said I wanted this printed out so I could read it. It's that we receive the information and that we note that a risk workshop will be held in August after the adoption of the LTP. And that was, it was generally, I think, commonly agreed we do that after the LTP, so we can relate what really keeps us awake at night to what we want to achieve as expressed in the adopted LTP. The purpose will be to agree a set of risks to align with it. Do I have a move and a seconder for those two recommendations, please? Thank you, Tony. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Ray. Can I suggest? Yes, Iona.
Happy to add something in about affordability, or do you think it's not needed?
I think we've noted it. It'll be noted in the conversations, and I think we've also recommended it'll come up with the workshop. So it'll I suspect a central part of addressing recommendation too. Iona, can we take our remotes, please, and vote? Right, it's 5:02. Can I suggest we just take a 10-minute break, chance to check phones, take a break, and could we be back at 5 past, please? Tori, thank you for being with us. I suspect you're about to move, so good to see you. Thank you. this morning, and Steve, welcome to the meeting. And thank you, Andrea, for in the breach. We'll hear from you later, which will be good. So I'm up to page 95 of our agenda, which is the pro forma financial statements. So firstly, Dean, nice to see you back for a second time today, and hopefully you feel affirmed over your work on the interest, but hey, this is a broader one. And Elizabeth, lovely to have you here too, as you indicated to me at our workshop. You're here to now drive a broader cross-council project, which strikes me as eminently sensible. So welcome here in your, sort of new role, if I can call it that. You may have a different view about what it is. But anyway, look, I'm in your hands if you'd like to take us through your paper, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Introducing this paper, it's just a noting paper where we're trying to provide the committee with assurance of our ability to achieve our statutory obligations and our joint audit arrangements with Audit NZ. We also give an overview of the pro forma financial statements, which you will see later in the pack, and I'll let Andrea and Dean speak in more detail to those. There's 3 key touch points the committee has that we outline in the paper. So there's 2 more committee meetings and some workshops where we'll ask for your feedback in September. And as Stephen alluded to, and you, Chair, we've upped the ante this year on our annual report, and we're trying to work in a more project-based way so that the whole story of our performance is told rather than a financial section and a performance section. It's all together, so that story of how we're doing is really relayed. So just trying to make sure we're not siloing in our approach, and you're getting the entire performance story in one go. And I look forward to bringing you the pro formas of Volume 1 in August. We've also just an update on our relationship with Audit New Zealand. We're working really closely with them to make sure that we get our audit opinion on time, and for that final sign-off later in October. We're just trying to keep our communication open and working closely with Karen and things like getting that audit dashboard loaded early so we know what direction we're heading in. All of that information's early, and we're on track. So I'll just hand to Dean if he's got any comments on the pro formas.
Kia ora, everyone. In terms of the pro formas, the idea here is just to give you effectively a bit of a heads up as to what they are going to look like. In terms of key changes, I think the answer is there aren't any. There are no new accounting standards that have impacted into this year. We have continued, the simplification journey to try and tidy up language a little bit. So there are a number of little tweaks, changes in that sort of sense, but nothing that I would kind of raise to you at this level. There are a few areas that have been highlighted which are literally to be determined because we won't necessarily know the disclosures until we get to year end. So things like post-balance sheet events and things like that. But apart from that, not too much that I think I need to flag to you at this point. Andrea, if you wanted to add anything, feel free.
Andrea,
that's absolutely perfect.
Karen, could I just invite you to tell, because I do have some audit questions, and given from a project management perspective, we do have an opportunity here with the audit plan to also deal with the, essentially, you're part of the team, but the external relationship with the auditor, which is important as well. It's great that you're here as well, Karen. Pardon? Yes, you can raise them. I'm now open to the committee to either talk both to the audit plan and also to the pro forma. So do you want to lead off, John?
Thanks, Bruce. Just read through the audit plan. Probably my main comment / sort of semi-concern sits in around the revaluation process update, page 99. Firstly, revaluing our investment properties. So that's going to be quite a significant item. We've recently done a revaluation, so I'll be intrigued to see what that looks like. The second one, of course, is a bit more controversial. We had issues with that around last time with the water infrastructure assets, where we were sort of on a different tangent from the other councils. So my question is, WSP, did they do it last time?
Yes.
Yeah. So are we comfortable using the same valuer for this particular piece?
You're all welcome to the table. You don't have to. It seems a bit formal to be up there. Sorry, I like a level of informality. We can maintain it.
Sorry, it's my first time. So yes, we've used WSB in 2022, and we have created a joint tender with Hutt City Council and Upper Hutt City Council this year, and we've awarded that contract to WSB as well. And we're working closely with our auditors on that. Yep.
So the relationship's changed in the course of the year, which is perhaps possibly important to recognise, John. You happy? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Any other comments you'd like to make, John? I'm just conscious that you've got lesser time than some of us. Right, folk, do you have other questions? Yes, Ona.
I know that every profession has their own language. And
careful what you say here.
I'm just about to. There's really no way that we could make it simpler and more readable for the public. I get that there are some standards that have to be adhered to.
Yes, like throughout the volume 1 particularly, we're definitely.
Oh no, it's the pro forma. And that I'm not that person, so it makes my eyes kind of glaze over a little bit, to be honest. Yeah. Can we be creative about this, Andrea?
Unfortunately, no, because I'm not. I will not profess to be a creative accountant in all sense of the word. But look, we are very bound by the accounting standards in which these pro formas have been prepared. That said, not many people will read the full annual report. And so, therefore, a really important part of this project is the summary annual report, because that is the thing that will be smaller, more digestible. It's intended to ensure that people can go to and see the council's performance, both financial and non-financial performance. And for that reason, I think what the project plan that we have worked on very much does is focus on that element, not as an afterthought, but as a key component to the project itself. So we are bound to produce statutory reporting documents. We will always try and simplify and do what we can. As Dean said, we've worked through the pro formas to simplify, to consolidate, to try and sharpen up their language, but the summary is probably the area that we could usefully focus on for that digestibility.
Thank you, Anna. Ray.
Thanks, Andrea. Can I just ask, this may be a silly question, but can I just ask, when the pro forma is actually written to be read by someone who understands accounting, or is it meant to be informative to someone who wants to say, where's our money gone, or whatever?
Yeah, so there's a really important principle in having accounting standards, and that's to ensure that all financial statements are prepared in accordance with their accounting policies in a like-for-like basis, so that if you are an informed reader, you can go to them and understand them. There's an importance around that. It is, I would argue, you need a level of competence or expertise in financial accounting to often read financial statements or want to engage with them, actually. I love reading them, but but that isn't for everyone. And again, that's why I reinforce the importance of a summary document that gets across our key messages.
Any other comments? I have a few, if that's okay. Can I just check, Karen, the audit plan is no longer draft, right? This is it. I can take this as cast and iron.
Yes.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, we noticed the attachment says it's the draft audit plan. I just wanted to clarify
that was just timing of when we received the final and the attachment of the papers.
Not a problem. I get that. I just want to know where we're at. So look, on page 103, and so I'm starting with the audit plan, and I'll get to pro formas pretty quickly. We were qualified on a couple of bases, and thankfully you point those out to us, Karen. Basically the scope 3 of the greenhouse gases and the meeting customer expectations. I'm looking at Wellington City folk, not at Karen. Can you give us an update on where we're at in both those matters, please?
Sorry, I would have to look into those ones. I can update you.
I would presume Scope 3, Karen, is still problematic. I know I take it we've updated for the 2007 factors.
Alison is here and she can speak
Oh,
to it.
Alison. Yes, she was. No, I met Alison for the first time at Smoko. So, Alison, you're welcome to come to the table. I can see I need a lot of people here.
It's not going to be resolved quickly, that one.
No, that's what I figured. I just want the committee to know this.
Hi, we have been unable to get better emission factors for supplier emissions. We are instead focusing on engaging directly with suppliers. We've run a great project this year. We've identified the top 55 suppliers responsible for 80% of our spend, and 80% of those are already accounting for their emissions, and so we should be able to get some good direct data this year, fingers crossed, that will alleviate the need for those emission factors.
So that was the identified issue in the prior opinion. Does that eliminate?
I greatly look forward to no longer being qualified, but that's a decision for Audit NZ.
Yeah. But I think what I'm so look, today's not the day to say we're qualified or not qualified, Karen. But I will be interested. Thank you for that. That's very interesting that we've gone to that extent of working hard on those Scope 3 factors. So it would be, and I mean, I think this reflects, I'm saying this to you, Elizabeth, as the project manager, this is the sort of thing I'm hoping you're dealing with soon, not later.
Yep.
It's either right or wrong now. It's either going to be better or not. So I'd be very keen that from an audit relationship, Karen, we get to the bottom of this one pretty fast.
Yeah, we will work on that and update you at the next committee.
Brilliant. And I notice, of course, the interim audit looks like now and next week, so that's absolutely fine. What about the complaints? Wellington Water and us, can we count people?
Yeah, no. So we still retain the current systems. We are not proposing to invest in new systems at this point in time until we are very clear on what we're looking to achieve through local waters done well.
Okay, thank you. So there's a pretty strong indication that at the end of the day we'll be qualified. Okay, that's brilliant. So look, I'm comfortable around all the information I've got there around the revaluations, as you said, John. How they're done and what the results are incredibly important to the final measurement. So I'm comfortable around that. So I get really a question, Karen, about the last 3 items in your audit plan, which I've benefited from in terms of advice out of the Office Auditor General and yourselves doing work around procurement, contract management, and project, program, and portfolio management. Can you just? But having said that, it always just appears. So I'm just wanting to check where this fits within your audit opinion, or indeed the broader reporting that you do to us as the external auditor.
So we've identified those areas as risk areas because of the significance of those activities within the council. So they are broader risk areas, but they also fit into the Auditor General standard around poverty, waste and performance.
Brilliant. So you're going to update your understanding? In essence, I think in the past have used specialists in this area. Is that right?
Yes, we do, Chair. We use specialists in this area. We've got good continuity in the area, so we are in a good place also to talk to council, because part of it is imparting information about current good practice in the area, and also we not only updating our understanding of what council does, but we typically select a sample of programs or projects and complete detailed reviews or walkthroughs of those to to ensure that any updates and processes adopted by council flow through to practices.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to that. That actually, adds a lot of value to the total audit, which is superb. Can I go to the group audit position, please, on page 113 of our agenda? When you said, here goes the component audits, I thought, okay, we've got a whole list here, but in fact, I've only got Wellington International Airport. Can I don't know what they would be. I could think of what they would be. I make some assumption this is where we have to keep current in terms of our decisions in another sphere and how this may or may not affect our final reporting, but I make some assumption that decisions we may make through the long-term plan could affect what we disclose about Wellington International Airport in our annual report, correct? Dean, am I down the right track?
Yeah, there's probably a number of things, like it could become a post-balance sheet event.
Yep.
Depending on when, decisions are made, ... It won't necessarily affect the accounting for the 30th of June 24 year end, because that's historic. But maybe a bit of extra disclosure is probably where we're looking.
When do we make the decision on the LTP? What date?
End of June.
Yeah, it's just pre-balance date.
But that's the decision as to whether or not to progress the process in which we would follow if that decision was made to progress may take a period of time because clearly we need to work through what that process would look like. We have not predetermined any work in that area because we need to have a decision from our elected members first.
So look, thank you. I'm not trying to make a big song and dance out, but I'm just trying to reflect. This is the reality of good accounting, is that actually it's got to reflect the reality of what's happening on the ground, and it's a question of it. So look, that's fine, you'll work with KP on that. What about Wellington Water? It's not here, but they're critical to our results. What's the story about the audit of Wellington Water? It's part of the group, 40%. I'm asking you, Karen. It's a group audit. It's part of the situation.
The story is we've issued our letter of request to the Wellington Water auditor around the performance measures that we would like him to provide us with assurance on, and we have provided our timetable to Wellington Water. I haven't had any indication that that will be a problem.
I'm just being a bit prickly. I would have thought I would have seen that in your audit plan, but that's neither here nor there. Hey, can I just then ask a question? In terms of materiality, we've talked, I think, before about financial materiality. I think you might have pointed out to us the importance of the materiality in relationship to our non-financial measures. And I noticed there's absolutely no tolerance around clean and safe water and also our discharge. Again, I think there's a strong signal there to us as an organisation. Tolerance sounds like you've got an easier way. You haven't normally in that sort of sense. But I just want to reflect. This is a tight. There is no room. We either are compliant or we're not. I'm looking down at this case, council. We've got the systems and processes in place to deal with this, given particularly through the water regulator. Compliance has changed over the last couple of years. We've got the systems and processes in place to deal with that.
Yep, we're certainly working on that.
Good. I like the answer. Yeah. Yes, that's good. Thank you. That's what I want to hear. You're glad you're leaving, aren't you? Okay, that's superb. And I just want to reflect that from a committee perspective, the lens on the non-financial performance is as important as the financials. Right, that gets me to the serious bit, which is the timetable. We did have the difficult position last year where, Karen, I know you worked till 10 o'clock the night before. I worked till 2 o'clock of the morning of the meeting, and it gave rise to some different results and difficult results at the subsequent meeting to adopt by council. And this is a chance to discuss what our best endeavours are. And it seems to me, looking at the timetable on page 124, that the 5th of October is our key drop dead date. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's etched in everybody's memories.
Yes, it is. We worked through meeting that yesterday with across all the teams.
Brilliant. Okay. So the critical thing there, Elizabeth, is that first and foremost, the obligation on us is to deliver.
Yep.
Number one, and to deliver a quality product. In other words, we've got good quality processes around it. And I think that means we have to deliver the full annual report available for audit in draft by the 22nd of September.
Mm-hmm.
Not a problem, she says. She says, yes.
Cross my fingers and put them behind my back.
Okay,
But yes.
yeah.
Just to update the committee, yesterday we worked through between all the groups, so we've got a centralised timeline. There's not isolated timelines anymore. We've all moved things around so that the things that are available earlier, they're audited earlier, just so that we're not rushing at that 21st of October sign-off date.
Yes, okay. And so the 5th becomes really important. Look, can I just say I am just reflecting, we were where we were last year. I'm just wanting to do my best to avoid it. And I would hope, Elizabeth, through the project, there's two things. One, absolute clarity between yourself and Karen as to where there are issues.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right down to the last detail. Can't afford to, no, Karen, if you need to have a quality reviewer or a second director or something, and that's not factored in, we then start having trouble. So I want us to be absolutely crystal clear that between the two sides, if I can call it sides, we know what almost that day-to-day Gantt chart is to get this darn thing through. The second thing is, if there are key issues around accounting and accountability, I think it's fair to say that we need to know as a committee. So again, I'm hoping regular contact, I'm sure there is, and secondly, there's good communication up to particularly myself and Tony, if not Wendy, as well as my fellow independent and experts. So that would be really, really useful. So look, best of luck. I know it's easy for me down here to say it's a piece of wheeze. No, don't quote that. It's easy, but actually I do wish you well with that. But please, we can support issues if they arise, if they're timely. Otherwise, I would reserve the right to be a wee bit grumpy if I suddenly find on the 4th of October that we've still got 10 days to go on the audit. Yes, Ray.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to bring up my questions about the group audit of the CCOs, in particular with Wellington Water. Should I be taking questions?
I think it probably is, Ray. It depends what your question is, mate, whether I rule it in or out. Go for it.
Well, I understand an audit is to look at what the company does, check to see that what they say they're doing, they are actually doing, and if those things that they say they are doing are the right ones, and are there things missing from it. So that's my layman's view of an audit. And so I've always had a lot of issues with what Wellington Water tells us, or even more important, what they don't tell us. So would it be the right place to bring this up with Karen, or should I actually have a discussion with her separately about my concerns?
I think it would be good for Karen to explain just how the audit actually happens within Wellington Water, and that the audit has changed, or at least you're not doing the audit any longer, Karen, but maybe you could just explain, there's a parallel process and then that feeds into our overall audit.
Yes. So Councillor, the appointed auditor for Wellington Water is not myself, is another person appointed by the Auditor General at Audit New Zealand. What he does is he provides his timetable for his audit to us, and we provide him with a letter of request asking him to audit on our behalf a bunch of material performance measures which go into your annual report. So we've matched up those two timetables because CCOs are required to sign by the 30th of September. And so the idea is we would receive the information in a timely manner as will Wellington City, from Wellington Water to incorporate the results in the annual report, and we just audit them. So we match the results to what the auditor has advised us that they audited, and
Karen, can you just clarify? I mean, the audit on Wellington Water is done ahead of our audit, like normally by the end of September. Is that right?
Yeah, by the end of September. So last year there were some issues because of prior period errors identified, and they had to be worked through. So the whole timetable that was agreed up front fell away. Went out the window. That's an unplanned event when there are significant prior period errors. That does need to be sought through. Of course, no one plans for that to happen.
Can I just note also, Ray, because I think your question may have been slightly broader. I think the audit that we're talking about here is the audit of the annual report and what is the information that's included in the annual report. So that will reflect, like Dean mentioned before, what has historically happened in terms of what the budget was, what was actual performance against that budget. I think you were expressing some wider concerns about the level of information that Wellington Water report to us, their performance, and that doesn't necessarily fit into the scope of this particular audit, although it does in a way in that they look at the control environment. But the purpose of this audit is to look at expressing an audit opinion on the financial statements and the non-financial information as to whether they reflect a true and fair view.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But I'm still flummoxed as to what to do and who to talk to about this, because I guess I'm afraid that we're going to go through all these accounts and the audit and things, and then at the end of it I'm going to say, well, actually I still have issues. And they said, oh, well, you should have come to us in 2029 or something, or 2023 or something like that. And so, and bring your concerns up. But I've been bringing my concerns up, and I feel as if I'm just say, well, I talk to people and they say, well, that doesn't affect us. I mean, I talk to Wellington Water and they say, oh, well, that's actually doesn't affect us, and that's somebody else.
I think the concerns that you're raising are broader than audit concerns, though those are governance concerns, and potentially we can take those offline and have a conversation on those.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. Yes, Anna.
Thanks, Andrea. Sorry, I'm just going to continue along that line of questioning. So, just given the conversation we had at morning tea time, so when we get constituents saying that Wellington Water brings 10 people to fix one leak and 9 of them stand around and don't do anything, that's the story. I'm not saying if it's true or not. And the leaks aren't getting fixed and they're too expensive. Are we able to stand by an audit at that level? And if we can't just yet, how long is it going to be for the program to sort through some of those issues? Because I think people think that large amounts of public money are being wasted at the moment.
Yeah. So in terms of that process, I would just turn councillors' mind to the field force review that was completed and publicly released, which was looking at Wellington Water's efficiency and effectiveness. So we already have the information around their contract management and whether or not there are areas for improvement. Wellington Water have given us assurance that they're working on some of those areas for improvement, and I think that that's really important for you as governors to ensure that there is a process around that. That's not necessarily a matter for an audit per se. I think the other point that I would note around having had the benefit of doing many different site visits, fixing a pipe is complex, and where people see people standing around and 10 different people, they have very different roles and they may be there for very good reason, so that's not necessarily the data that should drive your information, but the field force review was specifically for that purpose.
The other thing I'd just add, Andrea, is like next week we've got the Q3 reporting, and part of that report is, quite a lot on Wellington Water and their ongoing performance, and I think that's probably the most appropriate place for raised questions and the sort of questions that you're asking, Iona. And normally they attend so that they can answer those questions directly.
Okay, but just given we're the Audit and Risk Committee, then we can ask questions around the quarterly three report just to make sure that that work is on track. As long as they're improving, that's the important thing.
Yeah.
But it is our job to, because it's a huge risk for us, right?
Well, I think it's your job as governors broadly in terms of the LTP Finance and Performance Committee, because it's it's the performance of our CCO that you're raising questions about. So that is, I think, why Stephen has made the recommendation he has.
Thank you for that time. Ray, final question.
Yep, just a comment on that. And I don't mean this to be cruel or whatever, but
you're in public,
can we summarise that to say that the auditors are looking at the figures that have been provided, and so you're not at all concerned with efficiency or effectiveness or anything?
So we look at the control environment. So it's important to understand the control environment in which generate the figures or the performance results or the commentary, the variance explanations. So it's probably a bit too cute to say we're not concerned. We are concerned with those matters, but our focus is on providing an opinion, and therefore really we start with that and how we get our assurance. So by way of example, if the control environment is effective, the systems and controls are effective, we can rely more on controls. If not, we do what's called substantive testing, which is testing the transaction, which doesn't provide as much assurance to governance and management, because we can only provide assurance around that transaction, and we have to do a lot of testing to get to the level where we can issue a an audit opinion, applying to the opinion. So it's not like we're not concerned, but it's not, we come across it as we do our work. So it's not a particular, we don't zoom in on it as such.
Ray, I think it's important we reflect a couple of things here. One, the exercise we're dealing with here in terms of the audit is trying to ensure we have, through Elizabeth, a great project plan that enables us to do what is known as general purpose financial reporting. So general accountability, essentially following the money. There is undoubtedly, in my mind, the need for us as an owner and also as a purchaser of Wellington Water's service for there to be an ability to review their performance. I would want to say that would be generally different and specific information that is not provided by general purpose financial reporting. So your colleague's primary focus at Wellington Water, our primary focus here in this exercise is general purpose financial information. The stuff that comes around performance generally is specific, and that is a matter for the direct relationship between ourselves as part owner and also as purchaser with Wellington Water, and would happen in a different environment to where we're dealing with the annual report. So I think that actually there's a key point right at the start here. There's a chance to perhaps talk a bit more about later on outside this meeting about where that performance is monitored. We haven't been tasked with that here in this committee. Okay, so I just want to reflect on that. I would be interested to know where it does happen, and I think, Stephen, your part starting to indicate how it will happen, which is great, because in fact, I think personally, if I look at our risk environment, one of our broader operational risks is indeed our capability to deliver water and to take it away. So, I think it's a good question, but I think I'm trying to bring us back to, we're dealing here with general purpose financial reports. In your role as owner and purchaser, you need specific information, and that's generally not provided by general purpose financial reporting. That's for a different pro. So with that, I wonder if we could move on then to the pro formas, which I would just love. No.
Iona will take us through them.
Look, sufficient to say, yeah, that's right. Green. Actually, I'll make a joke. That's a good segue.
Is there time before lunch for you to finish?
I don't know. No. Actually, believe this will be music to your ear. Elizabeth and whoever. Dean, I'm happy to leave you some of my comments that are a wee bit specific and pointed in terms of time. Can I just reflect, though, a couple of broader principles for the committee? Sorry, I shouldn't make a joke, Iona, about green. Actually, I believe we need to up our reporting around, let's call it broadly green matters. The task force on climate change and financial disclosures, the XRB has standards out there. If you're an issuer, you must comply. So Auckland Council's an issuer, it has to comply. I'm a strong believer, and I've mentioned this really quickly to Alison before, I'm a strong believer that actually reporting, putting daylight on where we're at and what we're achieving is really important. That's not for this annual report, but I am very keen in the cycle of our committee that certainly as independent chair, I'm going to encourage greater reporting in this area starting pretty quickly. No reason that we should be. Can I just acknowledge?
Yeah, can I just acknowledge that, Bruce? And that's a conversation that Karina, who's unfortunately not here today, and I have been talking about because. From a public sector entity perspective, we both agree that that's something that's really important. And that's part of now Karina having got the financial control team fully resourced and up and running. That's part of our ongoing improvement journey.
And I mean, even our GFO is green bonds. I mean, let's face it, I'm not quite certain we have to do I can't remember now, but again, there is opportunity there for us from a funding perspective.
Well, we have accessed green loan funding, and of course, we do have a discount in our interest rates because of that. So I think what we are doing is we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but what we're not necessarily doing is reflecting some of the narrative and integrating that into our general purpose financial reporting, which is part of the next phase that we would like to do in our maturity journey.
Brilliant. Wendy?
Thank you, Bruce, for bringing it up. It was probably one of my points as well.
Oh, you'll make it better, so go for it.
No. As probably an assurance standard setter, so wearing that hat and seeing the huge move that's going on globally and locally to move to better, reporting. It's probably broader than climate. It's sustainability. So I think it's great that the thinking and the capacity has been built up to do that, and how you sort of look forward to seeing how you get the committee involved in supporting the right conversations and the disclosures there.
I mean, it's also something that we're maintaining quite a strong interest in, because while these areas are developing, it's also causing some challenges and constraints around the narrative, so we are looking at what we need to do to balance that as well, and very cognizant of that. So, I don't know if the Oxford Dictionary has put in the word greenwashing yet, but that will come in time, right? Because we're seeing that kind of dialogue. So it's making sure we take a really clear, balanced view to the work that we do here.
It is a word that's being used. We're not. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Wendy, and certainly look to your expertise in standard setting that we picked. So thank you, Andrea. We picked the pace up in this area. It's a real gain area for our annual report. Can I just do a couple of minor things then? Point out to our committee, if you look at page 132, 133 of our agenda, really the key part of the accounting policies is actually what are we reporting on? I love a diagram, so thank you for the diagram. And it shows what makes up two things. What is our parent? What are we as Wellington City as an organisation? And then secondly, recognising our ownership interests or various interests, we also report as a group, which is a different entity in effect, albeit it's us. And so I just think it's worthwhile reflecting on that. And at the risk of straying into politics, and I'm not wanting to go there, is let's get Wellington moving. It's still relevant to this financial year, isn't it? Or is it going to go from this document?
Yes, it's relevant in the sense of it was active for part of the year. So we have to report those results, until it effectively ceased.
Yeah.
But we have had to
effectively ceased as an entity.
That there is a little bit of wording in here that we need to fine tune around that. The exact wording that we used. There is some in there at the moment that gives the flavour that that entity stopped, and therefore we've incorporated the results up to that point. But we do have to just tweak that wording a little bit.
Right. I must have missed it a wee bit. I probably didn't read it closely enough. I'll have to go back and correct myself, Dean. But okay, fair point. So that top line's really important. So it's council plus the landfills, plus let's get Wellington moving, is us, the parent.
Yes.
Then the diagram underneath, you've got all the add-ons that we add to come up with our group accounts. Bearing in mind that we equity accounts for the interest of the parent. But it's not the end of there. Okay, that's super cool. The other thing then that I wanted to just raise a question on, Dean, was bottom of page 135, 136. No, 135, sorry, judgments and estimations. So I'm sure all my members, and I sound like I'm being patronising now, well recognised that the bottom line is an exercise in judgment. At this stage, looking at the pro forma, we haven't got any new sort of provisions or judgments, but the critical thing is the assumptions which inform what is the actual provision or the judgment call that we're actually making. So have any of the assumptions that we are using changed, which might give rise to perhaps a potential significant? Are we looking at any of those assumptions that give us worry at the moment?
Yeah, so you're right, the assumptions drive the numbers. So as part of our process of going through the year end, we go through sort of an interim and then final. So we look at all of those assumptions in line with the businesses. But, apart from I guess the revaluation side, which the results are still to come in, there's nothing that is, that I've seen that's significantly changed, like black to white in terms of assumption changes, but we still need to work through that to conclude.
Look, I appreciate that, and obviously got to hold those assumptions open until the day we actually report. So we've still got a fair bit of water to go under the bridge. I just wondered whether there had been any particular assumption at this stage, perhaps around holiday pay. Obviously I've already waxed on about Wellington International Airport, those sorts of things. We're going to have to hold those sorts of assumptions open until we get to the end. As I said, look, this is about to raise a detailed question, but you can look at my notes if you can read them later on, which is no big drama. I'll just ask one question in terms of construct of the financials. And look, I didn't have the time to go back and look at last year's annual report. Personally, I like it, but we disaggregate the primary financial statements with a whole bunch of relevant notes that fit with the P&L, that fit with the balance sheet, that fit with the cash flow statement. We did that last year as well. Did anybody give it? I mean, we're going to put these in for the Australasian Awards?
I'm not sure we're going to put them in for any awards.
Yes is the answer. Yeah.
I think, to be honest, I think there is a little bit more simplification to go.
Yep.
But that general theme of putting, I guess, notes with and policies with the relevant bit in the financial statements sort of came in a little while ago, and a number of organisations have sort of moved towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. Sorry, I just
think
wanted
we
the
have
comprehension.
actually won an award for our annual report over multiple years, and including for the last financial year. So I don't know what award that was, but I believe we've won one.
Yeah, well, again, look, I mean, while they're called general purpose financial statements, I appreciate that, it's coneheads like us that like them and read them. So I guess that's where we stand. Are you a conehead? You're a propeller head. Right, okay. Oh, I'm getting a bit loose here, aren't I? Okay, so let's take that on board. Sorry, the one other question I had was, it's an unofficial fourth primary statement, which is the overall FIS. We're not treating that as part of the financial statements. That'll come probably in the front of it, correct? At the front of the annual report.
Yes, correct. We'll bring that to you in August with a demonstration what it will look like, but essentially bring it under each of the strategic activities.
Yeah.
So it would replace the current cost of service statement in there.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. And I was happy that you were making that call that the FIS statement overtake the activity statements. It's probably just a matter of getting used to rather than anything else.
Yeah, it'll just be a new look, feel.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, that's all good. Appreciate there's a bit of yellow there. I've got quite a few comments, but they're not ones that need to take more time with the committee. Having rabbited on, is there any other, and abused you, Stephen? Is there any other comment folk would like to make at this point? Yes, Iona?
But can I just thank you for raising the green flag? It's great when we've got friends.
Well, yes. Okay,
all
I'll
working
make
very
comment there. It's good that we've got that on the timetable, which is superb. So look forward to those advantages, and thank you for your comment, Iona. Right, let's move then quickly to the resolution, which is. Sorry, Karen, sorry to be rude, I did have one comment. Can you provide us, or provide Elizabeth, with the date on which the subsidiaries must report their results to us by?
Yes.
Please, I'd like to know that date, because actually that's important to us finalising. And it's not. I didn't see it in your diagram,
No.
and I would be keen to know that. As a group, we've all got the discipline of reporting, and they should be lined up with a date that they're expected to.
Certainly.
Yeah, they're definitely in our internal timeline.
Yeah.
I can't off the top of my head remember the date, but yes.
Just, if you just let us know that, that's absolutely fine. It's like me wanting to have the 5th of October in my head.
Yes.
I would like to know that date when the subs are going to.
Yeah, it was certainly sometime in September from
Brilliant.
memory. Yep.
That's great. Thanks, Elizabeth. And I appreciate the fact that we've got you here with the work that you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank
so
you.
Look, can we move to the recommendation that we receive the information, we note the timetable, we note the audit plan. I think we can take draft off it, by the way, because I think we've agreed it's the audit plan. And we note the approach and overarching structure of the annual report with the idea of the themes and messages. And we provide we have provided feedback. I'll move that from the chair, and I've done most of the talking. Do I have a thank you, John? Appreciate that. John and I have checked this one out. He's good. Aren't you to go? Okay. Please take your remote, and then we'll let John get out of the room because I'm conscious you've got to go. And Tony, believe you me, there's no reason you can't become an expert in financial reporting, buddy. Well.
Are you saying if you can do it, then I can do it?
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. Right. Thank you for that. Can we move on then to the action tracking and forward work program?
Thanks, Chair. The action tracking, it's all on track. Most of the items have been resolved, the others that are still in progress, a few there. And in terms of the August committee, it's really a bit of an insight in terms of what's coming up in August. Obviously, the annual report will be a focus, and obviously those other items that we've identified. Sometimes these things kind of shuffle around a little bit, but that's our best indication of what's planned for August.
Very good. No, thank you for that, and I also appreciate, Stephen, that it goes out further than just straight August, which is really important. Any questions or comments on action tracking or the plan at this stage, guys? Thank you for that. It's important that we keep this track, even though it's largely procedural. Can I just then look, please, to the recommendation that we receive the information? I'll have a move in a second, please. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Rebecca. Please take your remotes and vote. Right, on page 269 of our agenda, we have the procedural motion to move into public excluded for a couple of matters, which is our legal risk update and briefing from the Office of the Auditor General and Audit New Zealand, standing time with them. I'm comfortable, for a good reason, to go into PX for these, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Rebecca. Is any discussion on the motion? There being none, can you take your remote, please, and vote? Brilliant. Rightio. Now, just in terms of process...
Sorry, just waiting on a vote from Councillor Chung.
Brilliant. John and Tori obviously gone, and Liz, I presume Liz is still with us, I'm not certain.